Good morning and welcome to Keycode Media's Inputs Outputs, our series dedicated to giving you short technical tutorials for the broadcast, production, audiovisual, and post-production industries. Each prezzo will run around 20 minutes and will be followed by a live Q&A with you, the audience. About a year ago, Avid decided to ditch the annual version release and replaced it with a more regular cadence of monthly updates. In this presentation, we're looking to recap some of the top new features released over the past 12 months. And who knows, maybe we'll get a tease of what's to come. Corey Tedrow will be joining us shortly to give us all up to speed on the latest version of Media Composer. Quick infomercial for why we at Keycode Media are doing this presentation. We've been the #1 Avid dealer for the past 20 years. Our success installing and supporting Avid systems comes from our large nationwide bench of Avid engineers who design, install, train, and support media teams with video edit suites, finish suites, audio suites, shared storage networks, and asset management systems. Okay, back to Avid Media Composer. When I think of Avid Media Composer when comparing to other editors, the core thing that comes to my mind is best in the business. When film and television production is your business, television, feature film, TV broadcast, news, or a corporate marketing department, Avid's always been the video editing software of choice for video teams that need to collaborate together as storytellers, creating the highest end content in the business. I know, I was there. How do you think my hair got this color? Some of the most notable Avid Media Composer features include project and bin locking. It's been giving editors, assistant editors, producers, etc. the ability to share bins and timelines across a network since before the turn of the century. Script sync and phrase find, syncing the script to your timeline using phonetic indexing of media, efficiency tools that allow editors to quickly jump to a part of the timeline or media. It's a huge time saver, especially when you're dealing with large multicam or multi-takes in a project. Symphony, super easy to use, conform, finishing, and color tool set that doesn't require an advanced color science degree to use. It's become the de facto standard for news and reality TV shows looking to get a quick professional color grade before it goes to air. Avid is the tool of choice for episodic television and feature films. You hear the PR about this film being done with something else. They don't mention that everything else is created using Avid. Really, Avid's the platform that does everything in Hollywood, and in network news, and in, well, I think you get my point. There are many other reasons to use Media Composer, like plugin support, high-performance shared storage, and overall third-party integration with professional video hardware and software solutions. But that would need to be a whole other video. Before we get into features, I want to quickly define the flavors of Media Composer that folks can purchase. Avid Media Composer, the basic Media Composer subscription that comes in 1 month or 1 year subscriptions. You can work in any frame size, HDR, ACES, and stereoscopic 3D, and you'll receive all the new releases and standard support. Important note here, this version of Media Composer will work with Nexus storage but doesn't support bin locking or permissions management on your shared projects for multi-user workflows. So, Avid Media Composer Ultimate. The Ultimate subscription includes the same specs as standard subscription, but also adds script sync, phrase find, Symphony for color correction and finishing, News Cutter for the news folks, and you'll have access to all previous versions of Media Composer, so you can change your license to sync with whatever version the editing project requires or that your hardware can support. Avid Media Composer Enterprise. Now, Enterprise is a customized version of Media Composer's experience, the ability to create custom interfaces for different roles within your team. And it gives you overall control of all Media Composer licenses from a management level. Avid now also just released Avid's Edit on Demand, which is Avid's answer to cloud-based remote post-production needs. A virtual Avid Nexus with all your media and using virtual seats of Media Composer Ultimate, all hosted in Microsoft Azure to let you collaborate together, work from almost anywhere. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, we're going to bring on Corey Tedrow from Avid to give a breakdown of the latest features in Media Composer 2021. As we always do, please submit your questions at any time using the Vimeo, Facebook Live, or YouTube chat. We'll try our best to answer all of them at the end of the exploration of the new hotness. Corey, the floor is yours. Let's take a look at Composer 2021. Corey Tedrow with Avid is here to get into the details of that. Let's take a look at the first section.
Hi, this is Corey Tedrow, Senior Solutions Specialist with Avid, and I'm here to talk to you about some new interface features and bin tools that have been added to Avid Media Composer over the past year that you may not be aware of. All right, so let's jump in. First one I want to talk about is something called bin status, and this was just added to the to Media Composer recently in the 2021.3 release that is just coming out. And if I zoom in here, you'll see that I have, this is the bin status, basically telling me how many items I'm viewing. I'm viewing all of them right now. And if I select a few, or if I, let's actually do this, let me sift and then make a selection, you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. So it's going to constantly update as I'm working in the bin. So I'm viewing 77 out of a total of 96, and I've got 5 selected. So again, just a simple tool that helps me better understand what I'm looking at in a bin and better manage all of my footage. So that is bin status. All right, the next bin feature that I want to talk about is probably the most talked about feature that we added over the past year, and this is called bulk edit. So bulk edit is accessible either just by right-clicking in the bin, or I can get it from the fast menu. One thing I want to point out about the fast menu is the bin fast menu is now mappable. So I can now map bulk edit to a key if I want to. All right, so we're going to go into the bulk edit tool here. And what this tool enables me to do is actually modify any column data that I want inside my bin. So for example, I have a few clips here that are all basically called Surf 001, Surf 002. So they're not very useful in terms of what they're named. So I'm going to modify the name, and I'm going to do it, basically I can choose the selection. I can choose, if I had more clips, I could choose all master clips or all sequences. So you have some flexibility there. So I'm going to insert, replace the column data with some specified text. So these clips actually all happen to be of beaches. So I'm going to add beaches. You'll see over here on the right that it shows me what's being modified. Here's my, my new name, beaches. I'm going to add an underscore, and you'll see why in a minute. Because now I'm going to change them all to the same name, and that's not super helpful. So what I want to do is add another operator, and I'm going to pull in some metadata from another column. I'm going to actually pull in some metadata from the comments column, and now you'll see I have individual metadata from the comments for each clip. So now it specifies as beaches, Malibu, beaches, Santa Cruz, beaches, Oahu. A lot more helpful. And basically I can now commit that. Also want to point out before we leave this dialog, I can save things as a profile. So if I'm doing a lot of the same changes, I can save it as a profile so I don't have to go back in and set things up. One more thing to point out, if I want to add a counter, I can do that. So for those of you out there that have 17 untitled sequences in your bin, you can now come in, change the name to episode 72, and then add a counter, version 1, 2, 3, whatever. You get the idea. A really nice tool to be able to clean things up in your bin really quickly. All right, so let's commit that, and now I've updated my clips to a much more useful name. That is bulk edit. Okay, in a similar vein, we also have a feature called Find Replace, which is probably one of the most requested features for Media Composer over the years, and it is just what it sounds like. Basically, I can right-click again from here, or I can get to it from the bin fast menu. I'm going to choose Find and Replace, and my up at the top here of my bin, I get a dialog to be able to find something. I have a bunch of clips here that you can see with .new, the friendly .new01 that we all know and love. Basically, these clips have probably been consolidated or transcoded at some point. So I'm going to find all instances of .new.01, and it's found that here for me. The orange one is the one that I'm going to change first. This is the first instance, and I'm going to replace this with something a little more useful. So these interviews all happen to have been done at Sundance in 2019. So I'm going to do SD 2019. And I can replace the first one, and then I can, as you know, I can, just like any other find replace, I can find replace and find next, or if I know that I want to change all of them, I can do replace all, and they all get updated. Okay, so that is find and replace. I already pointed out that the bin fast menu is mappable. So again, these features that I just showed you can be mapped to a key. All right, so moving on from bins, let's take a quick look at some interface changes that have happened. So I'm going to go over here to my settings, open up interface, and just a couple of things. I want to point out that bin icons and text brightness, as well as bin highlight colors, can now be adjusted. So I can bump up the brightness. If you take a look over here in the upper left, as I apply that, you'll see my text is a lot brighter. Looking in the same bin, I can also enable use bin background color only in tabs. And that basically, if I apply it, shows you that I can still use my color coordinating here, color organization for bin tabs, but I don't have to have it inside the bin itself when I'm working in it. So it doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you're sitting in front of a window, a screen for 10 hours a day, being able to customize and dial in that UI to make it easier on your eyes can be a real lifesaver. And speaking of being easier on the eyes, this is something I've been wanting for quite a while now. You can now change the font size in the effect palette. Yes, yay! So I'm going to right click here and choose set font. And I'm going to bump this up to something bigger. And now I don't have to get glasses, at least for a little bit longer. So again, being able to change the font in the effect palette, that is huge. All right, moving on from effects to audio, we're going to open up our new and improved audio mixer. So this basically has been totally revamped to reflect the new UI. And it's totally dynamic. As I move things around, you'll see it updates and changes. And you can prioritize what tools move with it. So you'll see I can display visibility priority. And basically, if I want the solo and mute to be prioritized, or the faders and meters, I can do that. I can also disable the dynamic visibility if I want. But again, just being able to customize that however you want. The other thing to point out is if I add a bunch of audio tracks here, you'll see that the master audio fader is maintained. So that stays no matter how many audio tracks you have there, that is always available. A couple other things to point out, you'll see that my track colors for the audio tracks are here. They are reflected there. They're also reflected in the sidebar. And another nice feature, we now have the ability to bypass the clip gain right here in the audio mixer tool. One last thing to point out, if I open up, let's say I open up the audio EQ, just to point out that all tools now can be, you can dock tools in floating windows. So I can create a floating, audio tool if I want with different audio tools in it.
That's some cool stuff there. One of the things I've always one of the things that's been kind of irritating about dealing with bins for decades now has been, if we want that sort of coolness, we had to take the bin out, put it into an actual spreadsheet application, and begin fiddling with it and bring it back in, relink everything, and hey, we've got our bins the way we wanted, and we were just wasting all this time. Not to mention having to play with Excel. When technically, Media Composer's actually a giant database.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just needed to put in all of these features. Holy cow, what took so long?
Yeah, I know.
and the other thing that was very cool there is that's going to be a lot of these features, like even the brightness on the bin and the size of the effect palette. As people start getting these gigantic monitors, hey, I've got to have 2 4K monitors. Personally, I already have the glasses, so I don't have to. I just can't see anyway. But I can't understand how folks were able to do that, and that is going to help people who are sitting in front of monitors for a long time. That sounds like it came out of a giant wish list. That's not the normal sort of wish list. It's the tweaks that kind of add to the wonderfulness of it. Where did do you know where they collected that list from?
So the definitely the beta team and internally, like myself, I even mentioned a lot of this stuff are things that myself and the rest of the demo team have been asking for a long time. And as I mentioned at the demo, a lot of this stuff doesn't seem huge on the surface, but when you're in front of the system day in and day out, it's those little things that can really help, just eye strain and things like that. And as you pointed out, I say that all the time, Media Composer at its core is really just a big database. And that's one of its strengths, is to be able to manage so much stuff so easily. And so I agree with you. It's just great to sort of open it up and give you that take it to the next level with those tools that allow you to actually work with it like it were Excel or something like that.
Yeah, even the audio tool, when you were moving it and how it, the master fader starts covering over, it's like, oh, that's like a split pane in Excel. They just borrowed all these features from Excel and put them in, and it hopefully that trend continues. It just makes life simpler.
Yeah, who knew? Making things more like Microsoft Excel. Yeah.
Sometimes it's all you need. So the other interesting thing is, are you able to, with some of the enterprise features, set up specific layouts? So, hey, I'm always going to have this sort of a bin layout, or this sort of a audio tool layout for a very specific user on my team. Like, okay, the AEs have one kind of setup, the editors have a different setup.
Yeah, so I don't know that we've gotten to the point where you can actually drill down into user layouts for enterprise. I think that's where we're going with it. We do keep adding more features to it. I really didn't get into too much about the enterprise stuff, but all of the paneling and layout changes that have been added can be saved as separate workspaces for users.
Very cool. And everybody has their user settings in the cloud somewhere. Like, oh, I'll just grab it from Dropbox. I'll just grab it from here. I think we're ready for the next clip. Let's take a look.
Okay, so this one has got to be my personal favorite, and I'm super excited about it. It seems super simple, but it's actually just great. And this is basically the ability to be able to find a bin that a master clip is in directly from the sequence. So what used to take a couple of keystrokes now basically takes a right click. And I can right click and choose Find Bin, and it takes me right to the bin where this clip is. So that's awesome. Okay, that is Find Bin. All right, moving along in the timeline. Moving segments in the timeline. So we basically improved this. So basically, if I have a segment selected and I want to, let's select this one and I want to move it up and down, you'll see that it is no longer destructive. It's no longer going to overwrite anything that it's moving on top of. However, if I let it sit for 5 seconds, it will at that point determine that, okay, you want to make this edit. And so now as I move back, you'll see it's overwritten the segment that it was moved on top of. And again, if I undo that, I'll show you. If I keep moving it and it doesn't stay there for longer than 5 seconds, then it's non-destructive. All right, so that is moving segments, improvement there in the timeline. Another thing down here, you'll see I have this tiny little icon. It's Sync Lock All Tracks, and this is available. This can be mapped out of the command palette. In the Edit tab, you'll see down here, Sync Lock All Tracks. So that's something that you can do from the timecode bar down here, but sometimes that timecode bar is not accessible, so it's great to be able to have this key down here. Again, and if you didn't know, you can now map things down to this lower portion of the timeline. So Sync Lock All Tracks, so I can turn on and off Sync Lock with the click of a button. Also can map that to a key, obviously. All right, another thing, I've got the inspector up over here that you may be aware of. This is the inspector tool. The inspector tool now is aware of individual items in a timeline. So previously, if you parked on a sequence, it would just give you metadata about the sequence. Now, if I hover over an individual item in the sequence, it gives me information about that particular item. So I can click through different items and you'll see it's updating the metadata in the inspector. So new improvements to the inspector tool. So here's one that's pretty cool. So I have a sequence here, and if I'm zoomed way in, I can now turn on a sequence map that enables me to navigate around more easily in my timeline. If I click off of it, it goes away. And that's something that can be changed. If I want to make the sequence map a static thing, I can go to my timeline settings and make the sequence map here. I can change it so that open sequence map as overlay and timeline, I deselect that, and now if I turn it on, it becomes a panel. So this could be docked somewhere. If I want to dock it, I can do that over here. And I close it that way. Or again, you can turn it back to have it be a floating panel that you click somewhere and it turns it off. So that is the sequence map. Pretty cool. Nice way to move around if you're working with a pretty heavy and dense sequence. Yeah. All right, another thing in the timeline I want to point out, selecting muted clips. Now this is something you may be aware of, the selection tool that we've had for quite a while. So if I right click and I choose select, there's a lot of different things that you can choose in here. Select to the left, to the right, same source color, offline clips. We've now added the ability to select muted clips. So now it's selected all of the muted clips. I have a few here, 2 video and an audio clip that are muted. And what that enables me to do now is I can then in one click unmute all of those clips. So now I've unmuted all of the clips that were muted in my timeline in one step. So that is select muted clips from that timeline menu. All right, let's load up another sequence. I want to show you one other thing that is a new feature that I'm pretty excited about. This is called strip silence. So what this enables me to do, I have a sequence here. This is the interview, and if we play a little bit of the beginning, you can hear some.
Right. How has Avid been crucial?
So there's our own Avid's own Michael Krulik asking questions there. So you know that's pretty common when you're doing interviews. You might have some off-camera audio that you want to get rid of, and you can now do that pretty easily with strip silence from sequence. And so this enables me to set a silence threshold here, a minimum duration. I can pad it if I want on the start and the end. But basically, if you'll watch what happens when I click OK, it basically cuts out anything. I'm going to strip out anything that falls within those parameters. So again, that is strip silence. And that is just a quick overview of just a few of the timeline features and improvements that have been added to help speed up your edit over the past year. There are many more, but that's some of the highlights.
Okay, so basically what I'm sensing here is that they hired some interns to go through and count how many clicks it took to do something. Because that find clip from a sequence, okay, I got a match frame, I got to find the clip from there, and then maybe that's a group clip, and then I got to find the clip from there, and then, oh, finally I can find the bin. Someone just said, let's get rid of the amount of clicks and knock down the amount of time people are having to spend doing minutia just to get the job done. I mean, that's actually brilliant because it's that little simple stuff that makes the tools just much simpler to use.
Yeah, I think actually probably some editors are going to have, to relearn some muscle memory because they're so used to having to do that, 2 or 3 clicks to get something. But yeah, it is. It's just, if you're doing that, how many times in an edit session, how much time do you save just not having to make those extra clicks? So, I think we excel at coming up with these great features and then everyone sees it and says, oh, but can it do this? And it's like, oh, no. Okay, let's add that, and I think we did that a lot in this past year. Yeah, and the strip silence, I mean, hopefully Michael will be able to join us later, 'cause now that we've silenced him, he'll have to speak later. That's pretty cool too. I mean, it's just you've gone through and figured out, okay, what are these things that are time sucks, and that we've lived with them being time sucks for decades, and we haven't even they've just been so inherent to our process that we haven't worried about it.
It's like, in the old videotape days, hey, I have to rewind back to that point,
Hmm.
and it's going to take time for it to get there. Um, you're just eliminating these things that just sucked up time in the edit session. Um, is there a key feature, one other key feature that you didn't show that you think is pretty awesome?
Well, an older one that I didn't show, which is it's similar to what you're talking about, and along the lines of strip silence, is audio ducking, which is the same thing. That's a feature that talk about something that you do all the time. I've got a dialogue and music, and I need to dip down the music when people are talking, and that was what audio ducking was designed for. It's one-stop shopping for doing that in one fell swoop instead of having to go through and do 5 or 7 steps to add keyframes or automate it or whatever. Let the tool do it for you.
Cool. And also it lets editors do it instead of saying, they're going to fix that in Pro Tools. I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
And that way no one complains during the rough cut viewing. Awesome. Let's get into the next chunk of video, and we'll see what other coolness there is.
So the big news on that front is the Universal Media Engine, and this is something that came out early in 2020, and it is basically a totally revamping of our media engine. It's the next gen, and it speeds up file-based workflows. It's also a big part of it is it's our replacement for our reliance on the old QuickTime libraries. And it's our latest technology for linking, importing, and exporting media. And now this is something that's built into Media Composer. It's not a separate application. It's part of Media Composer that enables you to work faster with file-based media and add support for lots more formats and codecs. And I'm going to show you some of those as we get into the demo. But here's a short list there, as you can see in the slide. And along those lines as well, back in 2019, we started adding support for ACES color workflows, as well as IMF and HDR media. And if you're not aware, our application, Media Composer application, is fully 32-bit capable. It's a whole 32-bit capable color pipeline. We support DPX and EXR media. We work with Op1A media, and all of this is designed so that you can actually stay inside Media Composer, use it as a finishing tool, and deliver to OTTs. So that's a lot of features that we've added just for that purpose. ProRes. So let's talk a little bit about ProRes. A couple of things on the ProRes front. We have native support for ProRes RAW. You can link to edit and import ProRes RAW on any Media Composer system. And then we also added the ability to encode ProRes on Windows machines. So you Windows folks out there, you don't need to hold on to that Mac anymore. You can do all of your ProRes encoding on a Windows box. More on the Apple front. Since our support for macOS Catalina, we are officially notarized to pass all Apple software security installation requirements. And we also just added support for the latest macOS, which is Big Sur 11.2.1. And then for those of you out there that might be utilizing the Apple Afterburner card, it is now supported inside of Media Composer. Decode and export of H.265. I'm going to show you that a little bit when we get into the demo, but basically working directly with HEVC video inside of Media Composer. Monitoring and I/O, we added 8K support for our OpenIO hardware, so that's pretty cool. Just want to mention that. And then last but not least, on the audio side of things, Media Composer is now supported with the S1 control surface and the control app. So you can now get hands-on control of your audio with the Avid S1 inside of Media Composer, so that's pretty cool. All right, let's get into the demo and show you a few of these new formats in action. So I'm going to open up the source browser here, and we will navigate to, let's go to our HEVC footage first, and I'll link to these. And then while we're in here, we're also going to get some, we're going to link to some variable frame rate clips. So these are basically some QuickTimes that previously we were reliant on the older QuickTime library to link to media that had variable frame rates, and now we can do that with UME. So all right, so let's zoom in here and take a look. So I have here's my H.265 media right here, and then here are the variable frame rate clips. So these, as you can see, the non-standard FPS, and I'm able to link to them all with UME. And let's take a quick look at one of these clips. Okay, so here's my almost 3-year-old going sledding. So there you go. And now let's talk about export. So if we export out, we'll go output, export to file, and take a look at our options. So I can now choose MP4, expand this and take a quick look. We'll see down here in our codec family, I can choose H.265 in my codec, my video codec. And for audio, I can choose AAC and change my sampling rate as well. Okay. All right. And last but not least, let's quickly talk about IMF support. So we've had IMF support for a while, but we've added some new things to IMF exported capabilities. So if I go to the tools menu and open up the IMF window, let's delete the thing I was working with before. And if I add something to the window, you'll see this prompt that I get that enables me to choose to make a new IMF original, or if I want to make a supplemental package. And the supplemental package is actually the big new feature. And that's basically the ability to be able to add to an existing IMF. So I don't have to duplicate efforts and re-encode the same media. If I just want to add a separate language track, or I've made a quick editorial change or something, I can now do that with a supplemental package here through the new IMF tool. You'll see all of the tool sets here for your encoding, your video, your audio mapping, metadata, everything is all contained inside here prior to your export. Okay. All right, so that is just a quick overview of some of our new features related to new formats and deliverables inside of Media Composer that we've added over the past year or so.
All right, so that's pretty awesome. IMF supplementals, that's one of the things we've been having to buy expensive deliverable systems to get done. And that just being able to do that out of the editor, that's going to make life a lot simpler and hopefully a lot less expensive for a lot of folks out there who are delivering to our friends in OTT.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that feature and lots of others that we've added, as I mentioned, is really just part of our goal of getting Media Composer a place where you can finish. And it's there. You can do everything you need to do inside a Media Composer. For many years, it's been known as your workhorse craft editor. But we'd like people to start thinking of it as a place for finishing. And you can skip that whole conform process and do it all in one box.
Very cool. Yeah, not having to take an AAF out and then try to bring it into somebody else and then kick it back out to do the output from Composer. It's going to make things a lot simpler. So on QuickTime, with AME and being able to do the exports, I've seen a number of folks asking, "Hey, I've gone up to the latest version and I can't figure out how to do this." It seems like people are still going to be able to do those exports they've always done in QuickTime, just they're going to have to do some changes in their export settings.
Yeah, exactly. It's just instead of using the QuickTime libraries, you're utilizing UME for the linking and the export. And it's my understanding that for those folks that still have QuickTime installed, it will use that. It's just that they're not required anymore.
Yeah, that would be the folks who are still running Windows and they haven't done an update, haven't been a new system in a while, because Mac isn't going to have those particular libraries available any longer.
Right. If you're on a really old operating system or if you're on Windows, exactly.
So on the color correction front, anything new in our old venerable friend Symphony?
Yeah, so not necessarily. a new feature, but what we added is, as we've added support for the ACES color encoding system, we've added a more granularity to when you're working in the color correction tool. You have the granularity that you need to deal with ACES color spaces. So when you're working in an ACES project and you've set that as your color space, you'll have more granularity inside the tool to work with that.
So the other thing, also, I'm assuming it was your work with Avid's work with Netflix as a post-alliance partner that got that 32-bit pipeline brought to the table.
Yeah, we've worked very closely with Netflix on all of this. They are a partner of ours, and they've worked with us to make sure that as we put things together for IMF and things such as that, that's what it needs, does what it needs to do for those types of deliverables.
Awesome. So just because my questions are exhausted doesn't mean that everyone else's questions aren't going to be brought to the table. So folks, please kick your questions into the Vimeo chat window, YouTube chat, and comments inside of Facebook, and we will address them as long as we've got time. And now let's get into our next section. All right, before we get into the Q&A, I wanted to briefly provide a few value-add suggestions to Media Composer teams. There's a ton of products that do integrate well with Media Composer environments. Here are some of the most common ones we install, which save time and money for media production companies. Boris Effects Suite, the most popular Media Composer plugin suite, includes advanced VFX, tracking, object removal, composition, roto, paint tools. There's a lot in there that quickly takes your edit from basic to advanced. Cinedec's CineX Tools is a suite of products which will allow you to quickly edit video, audio, and closed captioning in an exported flat file. This is going to save your team a ton of time, not having to reopen timelines and re-export everything every time you find a typo, or you just need to roto out that Starbucks cup. Telestream Vantage, an essential workflow tool for transcoding multi-platform deliverables, packaging for broadcast, cable, and OTT. The workflow can be fully customized to deliver whatever a client needs at blazing fast speeds with the highest quality 16-bit 444 compression. And it's pretty good at ingesting camera originals too. Of course, Avid has its own value-added products as well, including Avid Nexus Shared Storage, which is a high-performance on-prem storage system that allows teams to collaborate on video projects in real time. And of course, Avid's Pro Tools, which is Avid's award-winning audio editing tools. Not just used for post-production, but also in creating some of your favorite albums.